Alrighty, so for your Bootstrap part one, I just finished actually going through it and updating the instructions and doing it myself. And the thing I would say to you when you're doing this work is that it does take time. And there's a couple of techniques I'm going to give you that I found that were helpful while I was coding. So here's the link to the instruction. You're going to go from where we left off on attendance to 3313. Okay. So I'm going to move over. Well, here's where I was in the here's where I finished up almost to the point I'm having a stop. Here's my VS Code. Okay, so the thing I want you to see is also here because this, I ended up like when you do your first part where you learn about the grid, okay, and then you learn about columns, and then you learn about tables, and then you learn about forms, and then you learn about form groups, and then you'll learn about floating, which is kind of cool. So what I want you to do is not erase it, but just keep it all in one file. Now, I'll show you some techniques I use to help kind of organize this for myself. And now that I've gone through it, I realized I could have also put these headings for each one. But more than anything, this is just a reference, and also you'll take a few notes along the way. So one thing I did, and you could do this if you want, I created another index-1 file, and then I left in here the div, which is the class container. So one thing you're going to see Kyle do a lot, which is he'll do div dot, and then he'll do like the class. So like the outside one is always container. And if you hit tab there, that's the Emmet actually creating that for you. And he'll do a lot of that. And so if you don't have those commands, and I'll show you some that I actually figured out myself just to kind of make a few things easier, you'll end up typing it when he starts into a new one. Okay. So what I did there, as you can see, like if I scroll down to the very bottom, so where we started, where he was doing the columns, where you were doing the rows and figuring out different classes. Here's the other thing that can really throw you off is that when he's typing in here, you might accidentally type the second one, like because you can have two classes on a div. Okay. And that can really like -8, right? Or -8. Okay. Because remember, this is you're learning about the 12 grid system here. And then maybe he'll do an offset. Now, these are things you're going to learn about, okay? Like an offset one. So what's important to know is that when he's doing multiple classes, they go within the quotes. And if you accidentally put them outside, like if you were to have this one outside here, right? Like here, this won't work. And this is the other definitely important thing that I'm going to tell you is while you're coding along, okay, doing the coding with Kyle, it is really, really important. And this is just a part of coding and programming in general. But, coding HTML and programming share some commonalities about code and then see if it actually works. Because if you're just typing, you're actually not coding because typing is great, but if you're not actually checking to make sure your output works, then you're not learning what these different classes and are you because by seeing the output as he sees, as a matter of fact, a couple times I really had to stop and ask myself what happened. Why didn't I get that output? And it made me go back and do it and review it. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you the really important thing here is when you're coding along, right, is to make sure you're looking. And as a matter of fact, one of the things you can do, and this is what Kyle's doing, like if I was to pull this out, right, and had just from a perspective of having both of them, and this is really handy, okay? The one thing about live server running here is when you're making changes, they should just show up. If for some reason they don't hit refresh, okay? So what I want to see is I'm not going to get I'm not going to get way down in the weeds of detail here because I know there's a lot of it and it can be kind of overwhelming. The important thing is I want you to at least have done, because each of these that are basically your commits, okay? So it is important for sure that you follow along and you do your commits, right? Because you're going to learn about the grid system, you'll learn about some spacing, you'll learn about tables, you'll learn about forms. First, just the basic form, how to create the inputs, the ranges, the input, select inputs. I should actually just say select and options here, check boxes, and input groups, which is kind of cool. All these things are really good to know about, right? And then it talks about the floating idea on here. Okay. So the other suggestion I really have is that as you're doing this work, make sure, because like if you just select, do format selection. And what that does is as you're typing sometimes, or if you're copying, this is a very common thing because he'll actually select something and he'll copy. Okay. And then what'll happen is you will do it and it won't look formatted correctly. And having it formatted correctly is really nice. So if you select it, you say format selection, it'll take it, because when you have something formatted correctly, it really helps you see the structure. Now, this next tip is actually about that structure, because notice when I'm on the outer div, in this case, just for this code, notice how that line highlights right there, okay? And this shows you everything in here is nested in this div. And this can often be what might also not create the output that you're expecting, okay? So making sure you're doing that can be helpful. Okay. The other thing, and I'm going to scroll up and show you when I was playing on here, this is where, right, you can play around with, and I'm just going to show you this. Like, so if I was to type this actual command, right, this is an emit command, and when I hit tab, it actually creates that code. So it creates a table, creates a row, okay, creates a row, and then it creates columns for me. Okay. So actually ended up just having them in my comments, so you can actually see them here and stop if you wanted to play around with them. And then I filled in whatever data that I wanted to do. And then definitely you want to do, I don't have to see all of the classes, but definitely play around. And I want to see the output having that table and at least one of those that you found that was helpful. But I can tell you the more of them you do, because really here's what you're doing in this work is you're getting used to the Bootstrap system, because what we'll end up doing next week is you'll find the template somebody has already created. And what you're going to want to do is know enough about Bootstrap that you can figure out how those classes are used to create that design. Okay, so those are my hints for you. Like I said, I went through and did a couple of images just to play around. It definitely took time. I'm not gonna lie about that. But I was also rewriting instruction and doing stuff, so hopefully it won't take you as long. And I know, it says here until 33, but I know it can take some time here. If you're just to the point where you got, into forms and you're just done, submit your commit history. This is something I often do to give you a break. And I'm actually not going to hard code it into the instruction, but if you get here, I'll let you go ahead and submit your commit history and come back and complete these last two in the next 24 hours, just as a little break, because it can be a little heady getting some of this stuff done. But it is really good to learn. And this part of this is learning how to stay on task and stay on focus. Okay. All right, so coming back here. All right, so you will have some notes in there. I show you how I grade this. Make sure you give me your commit history for the Bootstrap folder. That's how you'll do that. And then I'm going to go now work on part 2 before I look at the other stuff for this week to kind of figure out where we're going to end up landing, because I don't know if we're going to finish all of it. We'll see. Anyway, enjoy. Reach out for help if you need it.